And Matthew's here with the latest business news, and markets in Asia are taking a bit of a tumble.
That's right. We saw some quite steep falls on the Asian markets in this Wednesday's trading session. We'll take a look at what happened there. Most of them, of course, closed by now. And we saw in particular the Shanghai market dropping by 1.6 to 1.8%, as you can see there. Now, what's going on? We're seeing investors react to the outcome of this four-day meeting by the Chinese Communist Party. And this meeting was all about setting the economic strategy for the future. We didn't get a huge amount out of it. We did hear from them that there would be a more decisive role for markets in the future. But the fact that we didn't get much detail is actually what's making investors nervous. Well, earlier I asked our Beijing correspondent Shannon Van Sant what the government hopes to achieve with these reforms.
It's going to be an incredible challenge for China over the next few years. It might be the most challenging chapter in its recent economic history, because what it has to do to maintain its economic growth is shift its economy away from an economy based on manufacturing, away from an economy based on exports, where workers here are making goods to export to the West and all over the world. It has to shift that to an economy based on consumption, based on services, and based on innovation. It has to basically make the transition to an economy that looks more like the economies we have in Europe and the United States. That's going to be a very challenging move to make, because what it requires the government to do is to take power away from China's state-owned corporations, from its vested interests, which have a lot of political connections, a lot of political power here, and distribute that economic opportunity more to private entrepreneurs.
Okay.
Now moving to India, where consumers may have fallen in love with low-cost airlines, but they seem to draw the line at low-cost cars.
That seems to be the experience anyway for the huge Indian conglomerate Tata. Now, a few years ago, it launched its mini car, the Nano. Well, sales have failed to impress so far, and Tata's now hoping to revive its fortunes with a relaunch. Well, business editor Marcus Carlson sent us this report.
The Tata Nano was supposed to be India's new people carrier. With a price tag around $2,500, it was meant to have car buyers lining up.
The first Nano was sold back in 2009, and Tata had big hopes for this vehicle, investing hundreds of millions of dollars in its development. That includes a new factory that was meant to build between 15 and 20,000 cars every month.
4 years later, there are fewer Nanos on Indian streets than Tata calculated. Recently, monthly sales have just made it above 2,000. Experts say the Nano was cheap, but perhaps not so cheerful, and that it failed to entice India's aspirational car buyers. Tata is now trying to revive sales with a makeover. It's launching a new diesel engine, adding more frills and raising the price.
It's really a challenge for Tata, because they had envisaged very high volumes to begin with. So it will definitely lead to an increase in volumes, but whether it will reach the 20,000 per month kind of volumes that Tata had originally envisaged, that will be a bit of a challenge.
Tata's hoping that its big bet will finally pay off. The question is if this time around the price is right.
Our business editor Marcus Carlson there in India. And stay tuned throughout the day, because we've just launched the channel in India. There'll be a whole series of programs about India. Well, let's get some of the day's company news now. And a merger between American Airlines and US Airways can go ahead. The government gave its approval after the two carriers promised to give up gates and landing slots at several major US airports. The tie-up will create the world's biggest airline.
A grande fine for Starbucks. It's been told to pay $2.7 billion to Kraft Foods. The coffee chain was accused of breach of contract. That's after it pulled out of a deal that gave Kraft the rights to sell bags of Starbucks-branded coffee. There's no word yet on whether Starbucks will appeal.
And a merger between two of the biggest names in pop. Principal Management, which looks after the Irish band U2, and Maverick, which represents Madonna, you can see there, are being folded into the much bigger Live Nation group. No details on the sums involved yet, but both companies will sit in the Concert Promoters Artist Management division.
Now, we've all played Monopoly, but you've got the real prices of the world's most expensive shopping streets.
Yes, that's right. Now, this is an annual survey by the property company Cushman & Wakefield, where they tot up the rental values on shopping streets around the world. The most expensive is in Hong Kong. Same as last year, in fact, when Hong Kong pushed just ahead of this street here, Fifth Avenue. I'm sure some of your favourite shops are on there. Shona, that's number 2. And number 3, France comes in at number 3 in the list. The Champs-Elysées is the 3rd most expensive. And interestingly, although the rents on the Champs-Elysées are much lower, the fact that it's got so much popular, hasn't it? In recent years, we've seen so many more, especially big American chains joining. Look at the rents there. In fact, the rent increase here in Paris on the Champs-Elysées was the highest, up 38.5% just in 1 year.
All right, well, thanks, Matthew, for the business news. And now it's time for web news. Today, some Filipinos are turning to the internet to find missing friends and family, and one young man has compiled a video log of his travels, an original way to share his experience. Take a look.
As the death toll continues to grow in the Philippines, many have turned to the internet to search for missing loved ones. Over the past few days, web users have launched and relayed missing persons appeals via Twitter, looking for information or news on a parent, friend or relative. A number of online tools have been set up to help the search. Google, for example, has implemented its Person Finder system, a platform where people can report missing persons or share information about survivors. Local Congressman Ferdinand Martin Romualdez has been compiling a list of survivors found in Tacloban, one of the areas worst hit by Typhoon Haiyan. He's posted the list to his Facebook page and updates the names on a regular basis. With many disaster-stricken areas still cut off from communication, a lot of survivors have yet to make themselves known. Journalists at the scene, like Ero Kabatat from Filipino network TV5, have been inundated with requests from people begging them to pass on messages to their families to let them know they're still alive. Reporter Jiggy Manikat from GMA News collected scribbled messages written on scraps of paper or cardboard and posted them online upon his return to the capital, Manila. Campaigning is underway in India, with activists demanding greater representation of women in the country's political institutions. The so-called Time for 33% movement is calling on the government to adopt a pending bill, which proposes to amend the constitution to reserve 33% of seats in parliament and state legislative assemblies for women. And the instigators of the campaign have been making great use of the web to spread the word. There's an official website and Facebook page telling the people of India all about the movement. And there's also an online petition doing the rounds online, urging citizens to join the fight for fairer representation of women in political life, and in Parliament in particular, as women currently make up less than 11% of elected representatives. The document is addressed to the Prime Minister, Manmohan Singh, urging him to do everything in his power to resolve the situation. The initiative appears to be receiving a lot of attention on social networks, where people have been voicing their support of the movement under the 33% hashtag. Netizens are saying it's high time the problem of underrepresentation of women in Indian politics was dealt with, as women are just as capable as men in handling state affairs. But although many feel the Women's Reservation Bill is absolutely essential, some web users in India would like to see a vote on the adoption of such a bill. Critics of the campaign say political representatives should be chosen on merit and not by their gender. The Blank Noise Project seeks to combat street harassment of women in India and encourage women to address their fear of public spaces. One of its initiatives operates via social networks and sees women and men, alone or in groups, carry out instructions sent to them via the internet or text message. So they could be told to walk down the street with a beaming smile on their face, or look passers-by in the eye, or speak to a stranger on public transport. The aim is to help women feel more confident and break the cycle of fear. The 1937 Hindenburg disaster, the 1963 Civil Rights March on Washington, and portraits of historical figures including Edgar Allan Poe, Abraham Lincoln and Winston Churchill. American student Dana Keller has been giving archive photos a new lease of life, with a bit of help from some image editing software. And you can check out her work on the History in Colour Facebook page. Vishal Washnik recently spent 10 months travelling through Poland, Thailand and India, and he's produced this video summing up his trip with a 1-second extract for each day he spent away. The clip's called Bits of Life, and you can check it out in its entirety on all good video sharing platforms.
See, baby girl, I know you love me even through the lies. 'Cause honesty, love, but never lead through action. I used to count the days with you, but now I just subtract them.
It's a nice idea. I think I might try it myself. Do stay tuned for more news in just a few minutes here on France 24. Coming up, a closer look at a newcomer in Indian politics in Asia Live. Stay with us.